All of you kindly pay attention to the themes of the short stories, the poems and the Tempest. One of you had requested me to upload a video on the themes if possible. In this video, I have tried to highlight the important themes, but my request to you is, if you come across any other theme, any other important theme, please mention that in the comment section. Let us make this an open platform for group study and let us share the knowledge. The short story, The Story of an Hour by Kate Chopin. Women in the 19th Century Society. This is one of the foremost feminist fiction in the form of short story. We have already discussed this in the explanatory video. Kindly check the description box for the links. Independence was a forbidden pleasure for women who were dependent on men and other male members of the family. The women were considered to be passive members of society. And then there is a theme of freedom and independence, and associated with this is the theme of happiness. Louis' dream of freedom, her realization and shattering of hope at the end highlight these themes. In this short story, we find that the women in those days faced resistance to female empowerment. Such was the society. They had repressed desires, so the subconscious mind played a very important role. Love and marriage. Relationship between husband and wife is crucial in the understanding of this short story. This short story highlights the marriage of Louis and Bentley Mallard. Well, their relationship is not a typical loveless or abusive relationship, and Louis also does not dislike her husband. But the institution of marriage itself is questioned, and in the institution of marriage there is subjugation. The partner has to subjugate, has to bow down to the will of someone else. In most cases, it was the women, the wives, who had to follow the conventional social norms. Role of women in marriage is very important, and Louis' claim of authority after years of monotonous married life only comes up after the untimely death of Bentley Mallard. She faced repression and she was just trying to fit in the role of a dutiful wife. Psychological aspect of the protagonist, as discussed. The subconscious is highlighted when Louis is in a trance-like state and her vacant stare before the realization of the fact that she is free shows that there is an internal conflict in Louis. The realization of a dream and a bright future. Herein lies the irony. Only after the death of her husband does she become free. Now, will you call it a loveless marriage or a marriage where there is love? As discussed in the previous video, I told you that Louis never disliked her husband. It was definitely not a typical loveless and abusive marriage. It was the society back in those days which can be held responsible for such a situation. And this short story is a satire, a critique of the institution of marriage and society and the construction of femininity in the institution of marriage. Time plays an important role, hence an important theme. Story of an Hour, when Louis transforms from Mrs. Mallard to Louis again, her dreams are shattered and she dies. So it is the story of an hour. The title is important, and in the title the theme of time is highlighted. We have the theme of identity. Mrs. Mallard to becoming Louis, claiming her identity. Self-assertion is more important, more powerful than love. Well, These are the themes that I found in the story of an hour. Now, if you have any other important theme, kindly share with me and kindly share with your friends as well. Now, moving on to the next story. To build a fire, Jack London. The first theme, instinctual knowledge versus scientific knowledge, which you find in naturalism. Man versus nature is the predominant theme in the story. IK, just for instinctual knowledge. Well, I have done this for my own sake in order to save time. IK, instinctual knowledge, represented by the dog, not guided by reason. The dog does not understand reason and his instincts direct his survival throughout the story. And we have scientific knowledge. Again, in order to save time, there is nothing called SK. It's always scientific knowledge. But keep this in mind that I have done this only for the sake of saving time. Scientific knowledge represented by the man, who relies on information gained from others, on logic, on tools, technology, uses matches and knife, technology, fire as a symbol. Learn, fire as a symbol. Fire is also a triumph of technology, where the man builds the fire with the help of matches along with natural resources. Scientific or rational knowledge clouds the instinctual knowledge of the man, which is his fatal mistake leading to his death, leading to his demise. The man is separated from nature, he is distant from his biological instincts for survival. He understands the world scientifically, and ultimately it is the triumph of instinctual knowledge over scientific knowledge. And then we have the fight for survival versus acceptance of death, an aspect of realism of Jack London's literary works. The man's emotional state oscillates between determination and acceptance. He foresees his approaching death and he seems to have faith in his survival as well. And this leads us to the universal human themes of optimism and denial. His repeated attempts to build a fire, killing the dog, which is again a symbol of his desperation, repeated running, again shows how desperate he was to survive, is an internal response of any human to a life and death situation. Again, this is an aspect of realism. We also have the theme of power of imagination. The man is not a thinker in the beginning. He is aware of the cold, but he does not imagine the possible outcomes of this cold. And it is linked to his inability to survive. Indifferent nature, represented as unemotional, unaware of the fate of the man, indifferent. Because nature in this short story is just an environment. It is the human response to nature, which is important, an aspect of naturalism which views nature without sentiment. And this again reflects in the dog's indifference at the end. The dog just moves away to meet some other food providers and fire providers. Limits of individualism. The man's insistence to travel alone brings his death, leads to his death. His arrogance, his pride, his vanity are all outcomes of his lack of imagination and his insistence, too much insistence on scientific knowledge. Here we come to the end of the themes in To Build a Fire. It's time for the Tempest. A very brief discussion. The Tempest, Act 3. Slyness and deception. We have sly Prospero, who observes without being observed. Overall theme of secrecy is highlighted in Act 3, the full act. And then we have colonization and usurpation. Caliban, according to Caliban, It was Prospero who had thrown him out of his kingdom, of his island, usurped him from the island. And then Antonio also did the same to Prospero, and he is now telling Sebastian to do the same by killing Alonso. So Caliban, Prospero, Sebastian, everyone associated with the theme of colonization, usurpation. There are themes of love, servitude, magic, conspiracy, revenge. Love, very easy, Ferdinand and Miranda. Servitude, compelled by Prospero to carry the logs of wood. Ferdinand, servitude. And then magic, Prospero's books, Prospero's art of magic. The banquet, which is an example of Prospero's magic and illusion. Very important, banquet. Antonio and Sebastian's conspiracy. They hatched a conspiracy against Alonso, and the theme of revenge. Prospero is trying to take revenge. He's trying to teach the sinners for their sins. He is trying to teach a lesson to the sinners for their sins. Well, roughly and in brief, these are the themes in The Tempest, Act 3. Time for the poems. The Darkling Thrush to begin with. Nature and the decline of human civilization. The winter landscape is an extended metaphor. State of Western culture at the end of the 19th century is discussed in the poem. The bleakness and decay. Western civilization is in a state of decay with no possibility of rebirth. Hence, this is an elegy. Hope and renewal. On the other hand, the darkling thrush is a symbol for religious faith and devotion, hope and renewal. Renewed religious faith as a solution to the cultural crisis. Despair and isolation. Western culture, bleak and in a state of decay. The speaker seems to be filled with isolation and despair. The darkling thrush forces the speaker to recognize the existence of emotions beyond despair and isolation. In Crossing the Bar, we have the themes of inevitability of death, acceptance of death and Christianity, journey from the earthly to the spiritual realm, the significance of Pilate, God, and the paradoxical thought that death brings with it not an end but a new beginning. And therefore, this is an acceptance of death. The speaker does not want mourning of the bar while he dies, while he makes this journey. Birches now. The joy of childhood, memories, and the tedious reality of adulthood are predominant themes. The joy of childhood, the swinging from the birches, simple things make children joyful. And then there is the theme of death, along with the theme of spirituality and the theme of escape. The speaker apparently has no interest in leaving life behind in favor of an afterlife. So what do you think about spirituality? He just wants to experience the cathartic and liberating feeling of escaping the monotonous, humdrum adult life. He is uninterested in any kind of true death. It is not a permanent death. It is just a temporary escape. Well, these are the themes in the short stories, poems and the play which you will study for your ISC Semester 1 examination. And don't forget to add any other theme, and this will be really helpful to all of us. Remember, learning is dynamic. We all make mistakes, but the most important thing is to learn from your mistakes and to share knowledge. Bye, take care and stay safe.